Hi everyone. Today we continue with our previous discussion regarding Middle English period. You remember that we talked about different aspects of the Middle English period or medieval times. Just to give you a quick reminder of what we had discussed so far, we talked about the feudal class, the rising feudal class. Then we talked about the changed socio-cultural and literary values in favor of the French invaders, William the Conqueror. Then we talked about the rise of the merchant class or the middle class, who were thinking differently the way the feudals would think about life. Then we talked about romanticism and courtly love tradition. We also talked about the way romance treated life at a sentimental level, means they cherished high ideals, less practical and more sentimental. Then we also talked about courtly love tradition, which was different from the heroic concept of love and the heroic concept of honor applicable to the Anglo-Saxon period. Now, when we look at the two classes going in the English society, we notice that one mindset is that of the feudal one, which is basically driven by sentimental ideals, and they have their own notions of mm, uh, mm, free time. They have money, they have resources, they can engage, they can waste time, they can spend time in things that may not be really or practically relevant to their everyday lives. In comparison, you have the middle class or the merchant class, who are basically dealing in businesses, buying and selling, and they need to be practical in order to survive and to prosper in life. So the sentimental ideals propagated through the medium of medieval romance seemed less appealing and less attractive to this rising middle class in the society. It therefore triggered a need for introducing or for filling this vacuum or gap of entertaining this rising class by the introduction of different literary forms. And when we come to this point of time in history, from where from here we had left our discussion in our previous mind map. So today we start by adding or by introducing these literary forms that emerged and that got currency and importance in the different ranks of the society. So I hope till now I have somehow tried to establish my point, and if there is still something not clear in your mind, you have every right to consult the previous part of our lecture, and that will make things clearer for you. So let's now go a step ahead. We now focus a literary form that was important and that is generally identified as the Fabliau. Fabliau, and then you add X in the end. So it is either Fabliau or Fabliaux. So Fabliau or Fabliaux. This is just to give you the idea that this is the singular and the plural form of one word. So please don't get confused if you find X in the end or if you don't. In either case, if X is there, it is the plural form. If it's not there, it's the singular form. The literary form is the same. So let's move forward. This Fabliau was basically a short metrical tale. Metrical means produced in meter, means poetic form. Where was it important? Where it was liked and widely used, it was used in the medieval France. So in the Middle Ages, in the French society, there were certain professional storytellers. And you remember when we talked about the traveler poets. So that system or that procedure or that culture continued. So these professional storytellers would share these metrical tales with people in different places. Now when you talk about how such tales could be produced or shared with people in society, so you know that in those old society, middle societies, we had apologies, this concept of bazaars, marketplaces, where people would bring their commodities. They would sit there, they would spend there. There would be inns where people would stay and survive for nights. And these professional storytellers would go there and they would entertain people. And the use of the Fabliau was one popular mean of entertaining such travelers. Now when you surgically dissect or go inside the concept of Fabliau, we see that these tales were characterized by vivid details, means all the necessary scenic details and the situation or the scene would be made proper part of describing the story. That was basically Fabliau. When you talk about the observations of these professional storytellers, normally when you are in a marketplace or in a hotel or in a place where people are staying, they are, you know, that people from different socio-economic backgrounds. So we would notice that the stuff or the content included in Fabliau would be comic in a sense, a kind of an element of entertainment in the stories, just to make the people relaxed, make the people a bit comfortable with what they were expected to hear. And of course, there were other attributes also, like for example, coarseness, COARSENESS, means the stories would be coarse, often cynical in a sense. You do not idealize what you are describing, and that is what we identify as a kind of a cynical approach. Now this cynical approach would be more relevant in describing women. Now when I refer to women, please remember that at some point of time we had discussed the concept of women in the Middle English literature at two levels. We said that at one level, woman was associated with Eve, and at another level it was associated with Virgin Mary. And then, if you remember, we had said that when people associate women with Eve, they think or they imagine or they believe that women are the source of all our sufferings and woes in this world. Or, in comparison, those who think or those who identify women as the shadows or reflection of Virgin Mary, in that sense, she is or she was or she has been basically the savior for the Christian people. They believed that due to the sacrifices of Virgin Mary, her giving birth to Jesus Christ, and then his resolve and his sacrifices have made our life hereafter secure. So, in that sense, when woman is compared to Eve, she is at the source of all our problems. When woman is compared to Virgin Mary, she is basically a blessing in disguise for the otherwise suffering humanity. So, in that sense, again coming to our discussion, when you talk about Fabliau, when you mention the element of cynicism with reference to the treatment of women, it means that the concept of woman associated with Virgin Mary was giving way to the concept of woman associated with Eve. So this was one important point that you need to keep in mind when you remind yourself of Fabliau. Now, but this was not the whole story. Like, please don't take it the way that this was all about Fabliau. Sometimes when you would be attending to Fabliau, you would meet or you would come across stories in a sense of town life. Town life, you can imagine any kind of a good looking Chagdara, Batkhela, Mingora or places like this. They are all somehow resembling these instances of town life. Satire was there. Now when I say satire was there, satire is basically a technique which writers employ to expose and criticize foolishness and corruption of people or individuals or a society by using humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule. You either ridicule someone, you make fun of someone, your statements are ironical or exaggerated, and in this way you achieve your goal of making and criticizing and exposing the follies of people. So satire would also be there, and this again can be somehow referred to the way the people, the feudal mindset would follow the romantic ideals, the courtly love tradition, the sentimentalism. This was basically satire would be followed to criticize such kind of approach to life. Now, again, when you talk about the different types of Fabliaux, you again say that some of them would be indecent stories. Indecent, I hope, is somehow clear to you, means immoral, not becoming of good human beings, civilized human beings, the way we behave individually, the way we behave in isolation, the way we have our individual likes and dislikes. Most of the times we may notice indecencies in such behaviors. So this Fabliau would focus those indecencies. Of course, we talked about humor would be there. Intrigues would also be there. Intrigue means you 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 trick people into different situations, you cheat people, you misguide people, you mislead people, and this is, of course, the practice or the practical aspect of our everyday lives. Now, there would also be certain instances of animal stories, and in those animal stories, we would notice animal characters, and through those animal characters we would again the writer would be accomplishing his or her objective of exposing the follies and the stupidities of human beings. One good example of such kind of Fabliau would be the Roman de Reynard cycle. ROMAN. You can notice it also in some of your books or material that are available to you. Roman and then DE and RENARD and then cycle in the end. Cycle means these Fabliaux would be presented in the form of cycles, means there would be certain characters, there would be certain actors, or like they would perform it. You take the example, there are traveler actors, they are performing a Fabliau in Chagdara, then they leave for Mingora, then they stay there, and then they go to Texala, or like they move around, and this is a kind of a cycle. They keep on repeating all this these stories. So in that sense, the assignment for you is to search for some good examples from either this the Roman de Reynard cycle or any other cycle of Fabliau. That would be really good on your part to identify and to learn something about them for yourselves. And of course, I will be happy if you share some good examples with me also in the group. When you talk about the literary history of this Fabliau, there was a time that many historians believed that this literature basically represented the rising middle class, and then reference to their materialistic values and conventional attitude, and then of course the common people. But later on it was realized that it may not be that simple, because Fabliau is not a simple straightforward story. You need some kind of a skill and some kind of intellectual ability to interpret and to get meaning out of a Fabliau. So in that sense, it would be not really desirable to associate or to fix or to restrict the scope of Fabliau only to a tiny section of society, in which case many of them may not be that much qualified to appreciate the subtle intricacies. Subtle SUBTLE, and then intricacies mean life is not that simple, and its complexity needs some knowledge, some background in order to really understand what you are hearing or observing. Now, we say that Fabliau represented among many a good first challenge to the literature of that time, with reference to heroic idealism as a way of life, means the sentimentalism, the heroism, the things that you would be talking about, less practical, more imaginative. So that more imaginative and more sentimental literature was challenged by the concept of Fabliau, maybe for many historians for the first time. When you talk about Fabliau or examples of Fabliau, we say that Damsirit, Damesirit, and I hope that you can also find it in the mind map that you are seeing right now. It is believed that it is the earliest surviving English Fabliau. Now, just to summarize, it is basically a low tale. Low tale means, again, it has a reference to those indecencies that we talked about. How a merchant's wife is tricked to allow a clerk to make love to her in the absence of husband. So, I'm not going into the detail of this Fabliau. I have 2 points to make before I end this part of my discussion. The first one, you need to search about this Fabliau, get some research, get some material on the internet, try to make a sense or meaning out of the whole story, and try to keep in mind what we have discussed so far, and then it would be desirable if you write it with your own hand, and then you share it either in the group or in any, so that many of us could get a chance to read what you have found out during the course of your search for Damsirit. The second point that I would make is basically just to arouse your imagination. See, there is a concept of a wife, and then there is a concept of a clerk, and he is basically making love to her in the absence of her husband. So imagine this is not sentimental. This is not something far above our imagination or the practical reality. We notice that humans are weak. Humans have problems. Humans have the tendencies to be intrigued, to be tricked into different situations. And this clerk or this merchant's wife is in no way over and above this concept. So means the way they narrate this story, the way they try to build an image in our mind is basically more practical than in the courtly love that we saw in different instances of romances. So here I finish with the hope that we continue with the next literary form in the next lecture. You can share this with other friends through different means so that many would get a chance to benefit from our effort that we are making here. Thank you very much.